Hey everybody, this is James,
Marco,
Bill,
and Mikey.
And this is the Movie Pals podcast number 177. In today's episode, we are kicking off a new segment called Voyage into Star Trek with a review of Star Trek The Motion Picture, the Director's Edition, as well as a full review of the new film, The Bikeriders. So let's get into our new segment, Voyage into Star Trek. So, this is our new segment we're going to be doing probably for the next few months. Let's face it, these segments, they take a while because the Star Trek movies are what we're going to be looking at, the ones that were theatrically released. So there are quite a few films we'll be going over, from the very first Star Trek film all the way to the rebooted trilogy as well. We're going to go through all those. And the reason why, it was more or less something kind of interesting. I would say it's pretty safe to say that all four of us are sci-fi fans, and Star Trek's always been around for a long time. Obviously, we're gonna go with that too. And this is one of those things that me personally, I don't feel like they're talked about as much as certain, like Star Wars, for instance. We talked about that before the pod, and I thought it would be a good breakdown to kind of go in and go through all the movies, especially some of the ones that aren't as well liked. They're there's some people say only the odd movies are good, or sorry, only the even movies, are the good ones, and odd ones are the ones weird. But I thought it'd be an interesting thing to go over, and I do want to start with me personally. I don't actually have any history with Star Trek. I've never watched the shows, any of them. There's maybe an episode or two maybe I caught when I was a kid because it was playing, and it was probably just truthfully background noise. I can't tell you people's names outside of probably the main people, and even that's probably a stretch, like, honestly. But I actually have seen all the movies though. Back in, I think, end of high school, early college days, I went and I watched them all. So this is going to be pretty fresh though, since that's been quite some time since that's happened. And obviously every one of them, by the way, has been re-released in 4K. So we're going to be watching them in the best format that ever could be seen at this point. And obviously before, I probably watched them in standard definition, DVD, or even recording it on like Dish Network or something back in the day. I don't know, truthfully. So
Black
what
box
about you?
And VHS?
Yeah, I didn't see them on VHS. I know I didn't see VHS. This was at least DVD time. So, what about you, Nabil? What's your history with Star Trek?
Yeah, I've always actually been a big Star Trek fan. I think because there was always more content, that especially the television series. So I'd watched a lot of those series back to back, and the movies, I'd say the original ones I'd only seen a couple times. In fact, I recently did my own marathon, and I say recently, it was as recent as like 10 years ago. So it wasn't that recent, but I did go do a run through of all the films because of my re-interest when the rebooted Star Trek films had come out. So I've had a connection with it for quite some time, and I've always liked the idea of the story behind what Star Trek is and what their mission is, and it's different from, as we're going to compare a little bit here, from Star Wars in the sense that it's in the future moving mankind in our universe, rather than Star Trek, which is different galaxy and it's a whole different world, things going on in the past. So I've always found the whole idea of Star Trek and the space exploration really fascinating, and so I've definitely been interested in keeping up with the universe as much as I can, and have seen.
Did you watch all the shows too?
I've watched, for the most part, I've watched all of them. I haven't watched the more recent ones that have come out, but essentially everything before these revivals that have come through in the last 5 or 6 years, I have seen all those shows.
Nice. Yeah, I tried to watch the classic one, and it is really dated. I couldn't make it past the second episode, I think, and I was like, well, that was a good try. So
not my go-to for sure, not the original Star Wars series.
Yeah. What about you, Mikey?
Well, my dad is a huge Star Trek fan. Like, he went to trivia contests and stuff and won. So he's like really big to this. So I was exposed to Star Trek since I was basically a little kid. And it has been a long, long time since I have seen the movies. I do catch the show every once in a while. My dad will just pop some on just because he wants something to watch that he doesn't, if he wants to fall asleep to or something like that. So I'm exposed to the TV shows a little bit more than the movies. I have seen them all. It's just been so long. I don't remember a lot of what happened to them. So this is a nice revisit. And I've seen all the new ones too. I just started Strange New Worlds, so I'm just getting to that one. But all the other ones I've seen already. Anything that's past basically Next Generation, I've probably peeked into and had some interest in. So it's been part of my life for a long time.
Nice, and at the very least, we're seeing them all in 4K now too. So, Marco, I'm pretty sure you might be the biggest Star Trek fan. I think.
I wouldn't say the biggest. I'd say Mikey's dad probably beats me out.
Yeah, probably. Yeah.
I'm a huge Star Trek fan. Yeah, since I was a kid. I've never finished the original series, but I have seen a few episodes here and there, especially the ones that tie into later shows. I've gone back and watched to kind of notice the Easter eggs or what it is that they're connecting. It's my mission to finally watch like the original series in its full. And I know it's only 3 seasons, but yeah, I kind of feel it, James. It is a little bit dated.
It's definitely a show from the 60s. Like,
yeah, they've updated, quote unquote, some of the visual effects, and it makes it just a little better. But for the story, I would want to watch it. I mainly grew up watching The Next Generation, Star Trek: The Next Generation, and I have fond memories of coming home from school, watching all my cartoons, Batman, Animaniacs, all the greats, and Star Trek coming out later, and I have memories of doing my homework and watching Star Trek and just having it in the background and watching the episodes. So that's when I've definitely finished in full, and I watched all of Star Trek Deep Space Nine, which is a heavily underrated Star Trek show. I think it's one of the best. I never finished Voyager. I want to. That's also on my list. And I did watch all of Enterprise, which I know got flack for it not being too Trekky, I guess, but it's actually a pretty well-told story. So yeah, I can name the crew from the original series and even the Next Generation and even some of the crew from the other TV shows. The new shows, I gotta say, I'm split. Discovery is so-so, and Strange New Worlds is actually really good. Very, very well made. Really good mix of the old school and the modern all put together. And of course, I've seen all the movies. Needless to say,
has it been a while since you've seen the movies, though, Marco?
It's been probably since right before the pandemic or leading into the pandemic. So it's been a while. Yeah. Okay. I think I saw only the originals. I didn't watch any of the new ones. Just the originals, just for nostalgia purposes. But yeah, I remember watching them on like TNT or Sci-Fi Channel too as they come on. They do Star Trek marathons just like Star Wars marathons, and I would sit down with my brother and just watch those nonstop. And yeah, very big fan of Star Trek. Yeah,
so as a listener, you'll hear opinions from all of us as different, coming from different backgrounds leading into Star Trek. So this should be an interesting segment. I hope you guys enjoy it just as much as we will. And just like our Coppola segment, we are going to give you trivia leading into everything of where each movie leads off and where they connect to what's going on and how production was made, et cetera, et cetera. So without further ado, let's get into some background on Star Trek in general. So Star Trek was created by Gene Roddenberry. It began with the 1960s TV series and became a pop culture icon. The franchise includes TV series, films, video games, novels, and comics, making it one of the most successful media franchises ever.
The original series debuted on September 8th, 1966 in the USA. It followed the USS Enterprise 23rd century crew on missions to explore new worlds. Roddenberry drew inspiration from works like Gulliver's Travels and Forbidden Planet.
The Star Trek series expanded its universe further, of course, after the start of the original series, which later continued with Star Trek the Animated Series and 6 feature films. In the 1980s, Star Trek kicked its newfound momentum into high gear with several new series to continue its expanded story on TV, starting with The Next Generation, Deep Space Nine, and Voyager. A further 4 films featuring the new Enterprise crew, the stars of the Next Generation series, were released in the 90s. A later prequel series called Enterprise was released in the early 2000s. Then, in 2009, a rebooted film franchise of the original Star Trek series was released. That would continue as a trilogy of films, creating an alternate universe called the Kelvin Timeline. And finally, in 2017, a new revival of the Star Trek universe was created, and it is now the era we are in today, including the new series Star Trek Discovery, Picard, Short Treks, Lower Decks, Prodigy, and Strange New Worlds, primarily available on the streaming service Paramount Plus.
Star Trek The Motion Picture, out in 1979, is a sci-fi adventure directed by Robert Wise, starring the original TV cast set around the year 2270. The film follows Admiral James T. Kirk, which is played by William Shatner, as he commands a newly refitted USS Enterprise to investigate a powerful alien cloud Vigor threatening Earth. The original series was canceled in 1969, and afterwards, Gene Roddenberry pushed for a feature film. Paramount was initially planning a Star Trek Phase 2, but shifted over to a film with success of other sci-fi movies.
It was Star Wars.
Right.
Yeah, just Star Wars specifically.
It was Star Wars.
It was a Star Wars.
The Star War.
Production began in the movie in 1978 with Wise at the helm, and it had a $15 million budget. The project faced numerous script revisions and last-minute changes. I actually read that this happened on a 2-hour time frame. Like they were just handing new scripts out all the time.
I heard the production of this movie was kind of a nightmare.
Yeah, pretty crazy. They actually had to ad-lib a lot because of that. But the movie features a new ship design, new uniforms, and new sets were created. Jerry Goldsmith composed the iconic score. The special effects challenges led to a rushed final cut. I actually heard that they actually personally had to deliver this to the premiere because they were still making changes right beforehand. So
yeah, Robert Wise was on a plane apparently, and he's like, "This is all we have." Like,
the movie premiered in December 7th, 1979, receiving mixed reviews for its slow pace and heavy special effects. Despite a $44 million production cost, it grossed $139 million worldwide. Its moderate success paved the way for a sequel, Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan, though Roddenberry was removed from creative control.
In 2001, Wise released a director's cut with improved audio, new scenes, and enhanced effects. The length was slightly extended. These are just some of the things that were slightly changed on it. Opening titles now included a fade over a starry background. The Vigor cloud interior was replaced with a small black mat with a CGI shot. The office complex was updated with a new starfield. There's an asteroid scene featuring a CG Enterprise, a different explosion, and the original optical VFX plate. The officer's lounge wall was removed and replaced with a new mat of the window. The Vigor emergent, the original shot was replaced with CGI. And the sound enhancements added in here was new ambient sounds on the Enterprise and a more menacing, mysterious audio presence for Vigor. So these updates refine the visual and auditory experience, aligning with director Robert Wise's vision for the film. This movie marked the beginning of Star Trek's journey into feature films, blending grand visuals with the beloved character's quest to save humanity. So without further ado, let's get into our review of Star Trek: The Motion Picture, the Director's Edition.
Thrusters ahead, Mr. Sulu. Take us out. Mr. Spock. Every minute brings that object closer to Earth. I need you.
I am convinced we are inside a living machine.
And just as a heads up, we will be doing overall spoilers. The movie has been out for 45 years, so if you didn't catch it, apologies, but we're gonna, just like the Coppola films, we would like to freely talk about it and not hold back. So this movie is sitting at a 53% on Rotten Tomatoes, and the description of it is when an alien spacecraft of enormous power is spotted approaching Earth, Admiral James T. Kirk resumes command of the overhauled USS Enterprise in order to intercept it. Directed by Robert Wise, who was most famous for West Side Story in 1961, The Sound of Music in 1965, and The Andromeda Strain in 1971, based on Star Trek, created by Gene Roddenberry, written by Harold Levinstein, and a story by Alan Dean Foster. This is released on December 7th, 1979, starring William Shatner as James T. Kirk, Leonard Nimoy as Spock, DeForest Kelley as Leonard McCoy, James Doohan as Montgomery Scott, Walter Koenig as Pavel Chekhov, Nichelle Nichols as Uhura, George Takei as Hikaru Sulu, Persis Kambata as Ilya, and Stephen Collins as Willard Decker. So guys, I gotta ask you then, so the history of the movie, we've all seen it then. Obviously, from what we talked about previously. I don't think I've actually, maybe I have. Technically, I just want to let everyone know, this 4K version is actually now the third version of this movie, because it actually went back and enhanced even a few more things. I don't know if you guys noticed or not, especially in the visual aspect of it all. But just looking at it before we get into, just even before we get that, what did you guys think of this movie? I'll start with you, Nabil.
Well, I'd never seen the director's edition before, even not this enhanced one, the 2001 release.
Nice,
Yeah,
okay.
So this was definitely a better experience for me than watching the original one before it was reworked. So yeah, I thought it was a fine film. It's not the strongest Star Trek entry. There's a lot of things that kind of mentioned earlier about critical reviews that I agree with, such as very long-winded scenes, and especially with it being like remastered, I felt some of the scenes were going on way longer than it really needs to be. But yeah, it was for a Star Trek film. I enjoyed it quite a bit.
Cool. No, what about you, Mikey?
Yeah, I had never seen the director's cut as well. So this was kind of a new experience, and it does actually help the pacing a little bit. It doesn't really drag as much. So I did like that aspect. I actually don't mind this movie. I think it's pretty decent. It is slow, but it kind of gives that exploration / discovery kind of thing for sci-fi. I think sci-fi needs that. And I think a lot of sci-fi movies that come out now don't really kind of capture that. And this really kind of does. So this kind of works for me. I didn't mind the movie at all. I thought that was pretty good still.
Nice. What about you, Marco?
I agree with parts from Nabil and parts from Mikey. The movie is a little slow than most other Star Trek movies. This is the one I've seen the least too, the motion picture. This version, the director's cut, first time ever seeing it too. I've only seen the original. So it was nice to kind of see some of the effects fluffed up. I think I was talking to James and Mikey. Can't remember, but it takes 37 minutes for the crew to leave the space station alone. That there tells you about the pacing problems of the movie. That being said, I do agree with Mikey that this is sort of like what Gene Roddenberry wanted to. The whole space exploration, that it's not just shooting phasers and photon torpedoes, boom, boom, boom. It was about exploration and about enlightening humanity. And I think that the movie did capture that. And because of that, I enjoy it. You know, probably not as much as some of the other movies, but I do understand the vision that the original creator, Gene Roddenberry, was trying to give us.
I think we're all kind of on the same page. This is a pretty slow film. It's 2 hours and 15 minutes long, something like that. And it feels like it, truth be told. I really did like the cinematic kind of feel of it all, though. I really actually did like that. I know that the beginning part with the space is actually added in, and it goes on for really long. But I thought about it, like if you saw it in a theater, that's almost like what you would like start with, and I felt like that would be really cool, actually.
Yeah, that created hype, like
and it's
into the universe.
It was kind of nice not to see something so... I mean, truthfully, there's little to no action in this movie. I don't even know if the Enterprise shoots a missile at all or anything, or what do they shoot? Or torpedoes? I don't know what they do, guys. Tell me. Homing beacons? I don't know.
They do shoot torpedoes.
Okay.
They were going to choose phasers, but they switched to photon torpedoes.
Yeah, I don't think it even happens though, right? They're about to. But they're like, oh, I guess not.
Torpedoes.
Yeah, the torpedoes to escape the wormhole when they get caught.
Oh, gotcha. Okay, so that makes sense. But it's really slow paced. I thought it was shot really well though, and I almost want to say that's because the director came from such a affluent background of films that he made that are, quite frankly, some of the most beautiful movies that have ever been released. So I understand, truthfully, why it was done like that, and you have a lot of these longer shots. I even liked the shot. I know that, and this is enhanced too, the USS Enterprise coming out of the docking bay. I thought it was beautiful, quite frankly, beautiful. And Mikey brought up the score from it previously. I thought the score was fantastic in this movie.
This is the only movie, I think, in the series that begins with the same theme song they use in The Next Generation. All the other films, do use a different one, but I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, I liked it. I have no connection to the characters though. So jumping into characters, I've always known that the acting wasn't the greatest in the original 60s show, because once again, it came out in 1966. Our standards for acting are quite different from then, especially for a show that was made, a TV show is quite different from acting in a movie in 1966. Because I'm not saying acting was bad back then. It was just this show has kind of had that whole William Shatner being very corny, but I thought it was pretty well acted for the most part. I didn't have an issue with that. Anything on characters for you guys? Anybody that was notable possibly, or any performances or moments that you liked?
I've always been a big fan of Dr. Leonard McCoy on there, and his introduction when they do bring him on is still just really funny, because you could tell he doesn't want to be there, and so DeForest Kelley plays him so well, and
I like him too.
Yeah, just throughout the whole film, like everybody, it is a very, from a character perspective, it's 10 years after the end of the season, so like we were talking about pacing, it's getting everybody together slowly, finding reasons to get them into finding a reason to get them all included. Like there's that sense of excitement, especially I can imagine after 10 years if you were a big fan to see them on the screen. But
I bet, especially. Yeah.
And so to me, there was a lot of fun with that. William Shatner was always an overactor, so he was just who he was in this. Yeah, it's just who he is. But for the most part,
man, that's a tight uniform. That is a tight uniform.
Still looking good. He said.
Well, he actually wears a corset. And you can see it in some of the scenes with the new uniforms they had. You can tell he's like got something underneath it.
Yeah.
Oh, he's got some kind of tummy a little bit.
Yeah.
Well, the whole crew is actually concerned with their age and their looks because of how past the show that they have filmed this. That they use special lighting and angles in order to hide their age and their weight as well too. And I was like, oh, that makes sense. But I think for me, Spock kind of was one of my highlights because he's half human and half Vulcan, and you could see that in the original series that he would express some of his humanity in the TV show. Whereas here, because at the beginning of the movie, he went through the Kolinar, which purges the Vulcans from all emotion. He's much different. He's very stoic up until he meets up with V'ger, and he has that conversation with Kirk in the medical bay, and that scene right there probably stood out for me the most for all the characters.
I think Leonard Nimoy's just solid too, man.
Yeah.
I've always liked Leonard Nimoy, even though I only know him from this stuff. I don't know what else. He was the narrator in the Dreamcast game Seaman, but outside of that, he's got a great voice, and I don't know if it was enhanced better for this movie or not. But I watched this with like headphones on because just trying to be quiet and stuff watching these, and he has such a commanding presence when he's on there. I will say though that they kind of, a lot of the other characters don't get too much to shine though. I will say that it mostly revolves around Kirk, Spock, McCoy, and then Decker really as the new character. Everyone else, I mean, I swear to God, I think Sulu talks like twice in this movie.
Yeah.
It's kind of funny too because Decker was designed to be a character that they could use later on if William Shatner was going to ask for too much money. They were going to use his character to take his place, and then it kind of got written out at the end, so it's a little different now. But yeah, that's kind of how that character came to be. It was like we need someone just in case we can't get James back. So that's kind of funny. And just kind of to add on what Marco said as well, it's like I think they added. I don't remember this in the original one, but it's been a while. But when Leonard Nimoy or Spock has the tear, I don't think the tear scene was in the previous version, and I think that adds a lot to his character because there's like an internal struggle he's kind of going with the V'ger, and he's trying to purge his emotions, and he's seeing kind of like V'ger is kind of like an emotionless character, so he's kind of seeing like what he would become a little bit, and I think the tear kind of brings that all together a little bit better, and I don't remember that from the previous version, so
I can't remember if it was in the original or not either, but that's also stuck out for me too, Mikey, because it almost like he's really kind of the only character of the crew that has an arc, because we start with him at the beginning and it goes all the way till the end where he realizes that no, wait, I do need the part of me that is human, and I don't need to fully embrace my full Vulcanness, I guess. It's not a shame to be human.
Remind me of like T2 is like, why do you cry?
Yeah, basically. Yeah. Basically.
Why do you cry? So I was like, oh, okay, that's cool.
It kind of is a subtle theme that is carried on some of the shows, because they always have like one character that's supposed to be quote unquote emotionless. So I thought that's cool.
That's cool. What about the plot overall? What did you guys think of the plot, Nabil? Did it work for you? It's a pretty simple plot if you think about it.
It's a pretty straightforward plot from A to B, but it was an interesting plot. I won't dismiss it in saying it's something like haphazard or something. Like the idea of this machine that was created by man is trying to find its creator and has gained so much knowledge and is taking on beings and taking their knowledge as it continues on in the universe. Like that is a very interesting thing. And to the theme of what we're talking about with Spock and the idea of like gaining more knowledge and trying to drive out emotion, there's obviously a lot of contrast and parallels to his character and what mankind's done and what this is like. I liked the idea of what they were going for. It is just a very thin plot. They didn't have a lot going. Like there was a lot of excitement at the beginning because of this entity is destroying ships and we don't know why. And like Marco said, it took 37 minutes for the Enterprise to actually leave Earth and like go and find this thing. And he only had
it up, Nabil. It's getting ready.
I don't
They had to fuel it up.
it was to get there or something like that. Their interactions with it was not really through the machine, but through a drone. So it was
It was, yeah.
it was kind of they were stretching a lot of that out. Because they slowed from like being excited at the beginning of like that urgency to really slowing things down and saying, let's learn more about what's going on here. And that is part of the, I know, Mikey, you said you felt like the pacing was okay, but I think that threw it off is that they really stretched those times out where they could have maybe just said, all right, let's just move on to the next thing. Where are we going? Why are we here? Just everything took a little longer. But again, the idea of the plot, I did like that concept.
Mikey, what you actually like the pacing though, in regards to Bill's comments on it. Why did it work for you?
Well, I just feel like it you kind of get more of the discovery, right? You get to kind of just sit in it and kind of discover with the crew. They're with the drone, they're conversating with the drone. They're kind of learning a little bit. And I just feel like sci-fi nowadays doesn't do that. Like there's not that many sci-fi movies that would sit down and take the time to kind of let things breathe as much as it did. So it just didn't bother me. I still think the movie's slow. It's definitely got things that it could have cut out and kind of paced it up a little bit better. But I just feel like it just took its time to kind of let the story breathe and like let us discover what's going on and kind of slow release the information to us. And it just kind of works for me. I don't necessarily need something that's super action packed or has twists and that kind of stuff. This was very just, philosophical a little bit and kind of let things kind of just bring it into you. And you just kind of discover things and just let it happen. That kind of you're exploring not only space, but also emotions and that kind of stuff as well. So it just kind of worked.
Piggybacking on what Mikey's saying, you, the audience, like join the crew in this journey. And the way the script is written is you're discovering things as the crew is discovering it too. You're just as lost as they are, and so you feel more interconnected with them to a point. You don't know what V'ger wants, why it's here. It's just this massive advanced force that nothing will deter it. So you're just as curious and as like not scared, but a little alarmed as the crew. And I think that part of it works.
There's a sense of mystery to it, I think.
Yeah,
I would have wanted, although like yes, it's cool not to see until the very end we find out what it really is and what's actually going on. I think for the most part, I would have wanted just a little bit more out of the antagonist of the film, in my opinion. Just a little more conflict.
I guess the antagonist was like, I don't know, ignorance or the search for knowledge.
Well, I feel like Decker was adding a little bit of that layer, especially at the beginning when we were on the ship. He was adding a bit more of like that animosity between him and Kirk because, he's losing his ship essentially. And then with the introduction of Ilya, like there was a plot going on there, obviously, because there's a forbidden romance that could never really happen. But now, as the film progresses, he's feeling more and more like something could happen with this, how the thing ends. But it's, to your point, James, like there really isn't enough friction. Like these happen, they build up, but then we just kind of say, we've got to, I guess maybe that's the nature of the Star Trek, but it's like, we've got a mission to focus on. So whatever these issues are, we've just got to ignore them now and just move forward. So we just talk about it a little bit and then we just ignore it and focus on the overarching plot here.
I can see that, yeah. So sci-fi element wise, you guys we touched bases on it then for these. So I do want to bring up that I as somebody that has no experience with the TV show at all, I thought it was interesting to see see it all kind of unfold. And I think it actually does a good job for anybody that has never seen Star Trek. I think it's a fully watchable film without having seen the previous series or the original series. Obviously that would add more context to it all for you, but as somebody that's coming in with no knowledge of it at all, and I still feel like it works as a film, maybe because of Star Trek so ingrained in US TV history, I guess too, maybe that helps out. And so because even though I don't know, I still knew like a lot of the characters, so for the guys that have seen some of the show, do you guys think it translates well into the film format compared to a TV show, or is it better as a TV series?
I was actually thinking, as we were kind of talking about this, I don't know many series of this time that were later imagined as a film, like something that started as TV in the 60s or early 70s and then moved into film like that. So I'd say that the scope of it is way better realized in the film format, and I enjoyed that. But the storytelling of it, I still enjoy watching the series. At least the stuff that I saw in the late 80s and early 90s. So I'd say that there's a lot more story to be told in the series, especially if you have the budget for it, like nowadays, where you can get more of that sci-fi element into it. But for what they did here, from a 3-season 10-year-old series and found a way to put it on the big screen, I think this did translate pretty well. And it really created a good, like Mikey's been talking about, like that sci-fi element. We really did get that a lot more sci-fi feel here in the film than I've ever gotten from the original Star Trek series.
Any other opinion on that, Mike? You're Marco?
I mean, I feel like, they're two different animals. Like the TV show had no budget. Like the automatic doors were literally people like pulling the doors open for them. And this one had a fairly decent budget to work with to make the visuals and the, everything just kind of come together. So it's really just like a different animal. They both work. I agree with what you guys have said already. And I think actually focusing in on Spock and just a few characters kind of helps deliver that in the movie. I do think that the show, just in general, Nabil was saying here, I do like the show, and like it's I don't want to say procedural, but it's semi-procedural. It has like little storylines that are going on that kind of solve through everyone, and you kind of get a little bit more about the cast, and they can like kind of settle in on one character and just have like an episode for them. Those kind of things are available in that format, which are really not available in the movie format as a whole. So different kind of approaches to things, but both work out in their different ways.
I agree there. I mean, this movie specifically plays out pretty much like an extended episode of Star Trek. Really, that's kind of how it is with a bigger budget, and that's really what it is. And maybe to a point, that's also what hindered it and what caused the pacing issues, because you can make
Possibly.
it tighter with 1 hour versus having 2 hours and 15 minutes. But you get to experience what its full potential could be with a big budget and with all like the effects that are needed to make this believable. Although some character arcs do suffer, and that is what you get from the TV series, as Mikey was saying, is you get them sprinkled around through episodes. But I think it does work in both mediums.
Nice. So I do want to ask then too, before we get into our final rating for everything, what were your guys' favorite parts of the movie? Like, what's the standout moment for you guys in the movie? Just a quick one. Go through y'all. Marco.
My favorite part of the movie is when they exit the ship and you can see the full scale of the ship and also like the inside of Voyager. For its time and for the effects that they used, it looked pretty damn good. I'm not gonna lie. It also like,
I think that's some of that is the new stuff, by the way.
Yeah, it just looks nice. It looks pretty freaking awesome. Now, I know they did that in the original version, but yeah, they obviously touch up the effects a little bit and make it look better. But I still think that an emotion that you put into it and the anticipation of finding out what Voyager is and what's about to happen, I think that works for me.
What about you, Mikey?
You kind of mentioned it earlier. I can imagine the 5-minute approach to the USS Enterprise. I can just imagine that in a whole theater, going to IMAX or whatever, what nowadays that's what it would be. And just kind of, if I was a fan, just how cool that would have been. I guess the model they built of that ship was pretty large, but it wasn't large enough to get the shots they wanted. So they actually built or commissioned a new camera to take the shots. So they really kind of put details into that. And I just thought it was kind of amazing. And just kind of thinking or imagining that I was in a theater seeing this for the first time, being a huge fan of this, like how epic that shot would have been. So that's kind of my favorite.
Nice. What about you, Nabil?
We talked about it a little bit, but I really did enjoy that scene where Spock was in the med bay and was kind of realizing what he had just experienced, and it was the first time he actually smiles in the film. And when I saw that, I was like, there's a Spock that we know. Like he's got he's back, he's kind of broken out of whatever he was going through and trying to find that, and it's like, I found connection and here's my humanity back. So I liked seeing that. That kind of reminded me a little bit of the original series.
Mine actually, Mikey, is the same thing. I actually really like that shot of the USS Enterprise and the sense of scale you get from it coming out, and it's with that score too. The score is perfect in this movie. It's a really good score, man. Yeah. So, what were the low points for you guys? What was the absolute worst part, or parts that you don't say worst? It could be the part that you didn't like as much. Start back with you, Nabil.
I know you guys really liked seeing that long shot, and it was beautifully done when we first saw the guys. But man, there was like a spaceman floating around in the background saying "see you later," and I think we spent 10 minutes in that scene just watching it. It's long. Like
it might have been in the fields while I was watching it, though. I was like,
we could have cut it down a little bit, but it was. It was dragging on, but on top of that, I really didn't. I felt like them going into the ship of Voyager, the initial one, very nice looking as well, but also taking forever to get to wherever they're going. Like
almost very Willy Wonka in the tunnel of fucking madness. Yeah. What about you, Marco?
I gotta say, those first 37 minutes, man. Those first 37 minutes were rough to get through. They show a lot of cool stuff. You see the Klingons at the beginning get wiped out by V'ger. You don't know what the fuck's going on. And yeah, that epic shot of the Enterprise is freaking awesome. I was like, maybe you guys could have started there. I don't know. But it's just that slow buildup I felt was like the weak point of the movie.
What about you, Mikey?
I don't know. I feel like the whole movie's kind of just a vibe, right? It's kind of just slow paced, but there are maybe the 4K remaster kind of puts some of the scenes, like makes them look a lot worse. So someone mentioned the spaceman, like they have like an orange suit. It just looks really bad. It looks really bad now. Like it's really fake looking. So I think that's probably the thing that kind of took me out the most.
Mine was Ilya's head. I didn't like that at all.
That's her people. That's how they are.
Yeah, it bothered me. I didn't like that look of her. And actually, her as a character was probably one of the weaker points for me.
Oh, yeah. Like, as a
I feel like they could have changed that. I know, I can almost imagine it's because of budget. Like, this is the person that's coming back now as the drone. I was like, I have to say, I was like, really?
Her introduction, just as an aside, like already it sets up how much you don't like her anymore, because she comes and she's like, I've taken a vow of celibacy. I was like, cool. I just wanted to know your name. You didn't need to share that information. Like, okay,
just saying hi to you. That's not a big deal.
I like how she calls out Kirk, because every captain has, they're all freaking, womanizers, and she's like, hey, just. Yeah, she just calls him out in front of everybody.
I'd have been like, no problem, 8-ball. I won't be 75 feet from you. We're good here. So, all right, guys, let's get into our ratings of the film. And if you'd recommend it, Nabil.
I gave this a 3 stars. And yeah, I'd recommend it. I think it's worth a fair entry in the Star Trek universe.
Nice. Marco?
I also give it 3 stars and feel that it's worth a watch, especially the 4K version. And also that final shot at the end when the Enterprise heads
cool.
on yonder. It's really cool.
They had the little Spock narrating, I think, in the background, right?
Yeah.
Mikey, what about you?
I also gave it 3 stars. And just like everybody else said, I think it's worth a watch.
Yeah, I also gave it 3. So we all gave it 3. Look at that.
Full square.
Unison. I think it's worth it if you're a sci-fi fan. Even if you do not like Star Wars and know anything, like I said, that's me for the most part. And I think it's not bad. It's not great. I wouldn't be like, you have to see Star Trek, the motion picture director's edition. Right? Kind of a long title. But for the most part, it wasn't bad. For the most part, it was an enjoyable one. Although it's long, I think it's, like Mikey said, a good start off for for at least the motion picture films. So, and are you guys excited to watch the rest of these?
Oh, fuck yeah.
Yeah, knowing what the next movie is, yes, I am excited about it.
They get better.
Yeah, they almost went a little aliens in the next one, if you know what I mean. So, all right, let's move on now to our main review of the Bikeriders.
I'm thinking of starting a riding club.
Why? All those clubs do is sit around talking about motorcycles.
That's what we do. They don't belong nowhere else, so they belong together. But you're the man in charge. I'm Johnny. We're the Vandals.
I'm Ben. I like you guys.
Your boyfriends are getting into trouble.
What the hell were you thinking back there?
No, son, I saw you squaring off with them guys. What do I need to think for?
Yeah, you and me, kid.
The Bikeriders, currently sitting at a 81% on Rotten Tomatoes. The synopsis is, after a chance encounter, headstrong Kathy is drawn to Benny, member of the Midwestern motorcycle club, the Vandals. As the club transforms into a dangerous underworld of violence, Benny must choose between Kathy and his loyalty to the club. This is directed and written by Jeff Nichols, who also did Take Shelter in 2011, Mud in 2012, Midnight Special in 2016, and Loving as well in 2016. This film was released on June 21st and is currently in theaters. This is starring Jodie Comer as Kathy Bauer, Austin Butler as Benny Bauer, Tom Hardy as Johnny Davis, Michael Shannon as Zipco, Mike Feast as Danny Lyon, Norman Reedus as Funny Sonny, Boyd Holbrook as Cal, Damon Harriman as Brucey, Bo Knapp as Wahoo, Emory Cohen as Cockroach, Carl Glusman as Corky, Toby Wallace as The Kid, and Happy Anderson as Big Jack. So James, I'm going to start with you. what do you think about the movie?
You know, I saw this last Monday with Mikey as part of the Regal Mystery Movie, and I feel like we saw this 4 years ago at this point. Lots happened in the last week, but I thought it was okay. I liked it. I'm a kind of a Jeff Nichols fan. Truthfully, I've actually seen all his movies, except his very first one that came out even before Take Shelter. So throughout his career, I've actually seen a lot of his movies, and they all kind of have pretty big ensembles, I think, too. And I liked the cast in this one a lot. I think for me, the narrative structure was a little strange overall, of the way that kind of things are untold or unfolded and told. But I think, truthfully, it's Tom Hardy and Austin Butler are just fantastic in this movie, in my opinion. It's just one of those things where I think the characters really guide the movie, and it's shot very uniquely. I thought that was really well done overall, and it's just crazy that Austin Butler is basically Elvis, and we just keep seeing Elvis movies now in 2024.
Yeah,
it's just basically Elvis. I'm like, oh, that's Elvis. Okay, it's cool. So yeah, overall, I enjoyed it. Overall, it wasn't the greatest movie, but I had a good time.
What about you, Mikey? What were your thoughts?
I do agree with what James said. It was told in a strange way, but I got used to that pretty quickly. It didn't bother me in the long run, and the characters are just absolutely fantastic. All the performances are great. Just the cast in general, just everybody did a great job. So I enjoyed this one. I liked it a lot, actually.
And what about yourself, Marco?
I really like this one, dude. Kind of echoing what these guys said. The characters were great. Jodie Comer did a really good job, man. She nailed that accent. Yeah, 100%. I was like, holy shit! Like, how long did it take her to get into this character of just saying every other word? Her little tics, the way she freaking talked and narrated, it worked for the movie. Tom Hardy, of course, did great. His choice of voice, I guess, is a little questionable, but hey, it worked.
He's Eddie Brock, man. What are you talking about?
I was like, I was totally expecting to be like, why would we do that? Austin Butler did great, always fantastic, and everything's in. Even though he's kind of stuck with that accent, but hey, whatever, it worked for this role.
I mean, guys, I think this is his voice now, guys. Going forward, I don't think we're not.
It's not as hard as it used to be, though. So there's that.
It still has that. I don't know, man.
A little hint of it. The whole cast, dude, it all worked. The whole group of the bikers worked. Each of them had a different personality. I like that. And I didn't have a problem with the narration. I felt it worked. It was told like kind of in the personality of these characters and through the lens of these characters. And, whether or not they are a, reliable enough narrator or not is up to us, because it's really up, their opinion of how things unfolded. Specifically Kathy's. But I think it worked. It was unique. Yeah, it was a little off-putting at first. It's like, oh wow, a little jolty, but I still enjoyed it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm with you there, Marco. I thought that the story itself was an interesting way to tell. I liked the interview aspect of it and kind of going back and having it retold from an outsider's perspective. So that whole premise of the interviewer and interviewee and just trying to build a story around that was quite enjoyable. It was a little different take. And yeah, just echoing again what everybody's saying here, very strong character work. Jeff Nichols had a vision for this. I saw a couple of interviews about what he was trying to base it off of and the feel he was trying to go for it. And I think it all comes very clear onto the screen when you kind of realize what he was going for. And in the film itself, like, to be honest, I compared to some other films that just have like motorcycles in them, this really made me feel like I was seeing a club for what it was, and they just actually wanted to hang out. And obviously we talked a little bit at the synopsis about how it kind of devolves into something more violent over time, but at least that initial feeling of why the club is there to how it got over there, I feel that there was a good progression there where we actually had a better understanding of how it went to where it ended up being, and that it just was really well told, in my opinion, from how we started. And it wasn't just being force-fed to us to say, and then, like one of those older films in the 90s where they would kind of go back into the 50s and say, but that never happened, and this is what really is going on now. Like, there wasn't that kind of narration. It was just kind of showing you as good. So I enjoyed that part of it. And speaking about, like, we obviously a big ensemble cast. We have a lot of performances. We've talked a little bit about the voice work as well. But I'm going to start with you, Mikey. Let's talk a little bit about some of the standout characters. Who really stuck out for you that you really felt was a strong performance in the film?
Yeah, I mean, everybody kind of said like everybody did a good job. So I do think Jodie Comer and Tom Hardy did a great job with their characters. But I just really thought that Austin Butler and Benny was just a really interesting character. He almost has like a nonchalant way of going about his life, and he just loves writing, and he kind of just wants to kind of fill that out. And I feel that the love triangle, I'll call it that, between Kathy, Benny, and Johnny, right? They're all trying to get Benny on their side, and it's really not really even. It can be said as a love, but it's really just kind of wanting him to be around them. They just kind of like his presence, I guess. And the way he kind of just has kind of like an attitude about how he approaches everything. I mean, he's even telling them like, "Nah, it's not me." In some of the stuff, like kind of like, "Hey, this is you. This is you. Like the club is going to be, maybe yours at some point." And he's like, "Nah, it's not me." And then, Kathy's trying to pull him in her direction. He's like, "No, I'm always going to be writing." So he's always like kind of fighting everything, and he just pulls it off really well. And then he's got charisma. He just feels like, and that's not just in this movie, in a lot of movies, but this movie really kind of came off pretty well, in my opinion. He's just going with the flow. He's staying loyal to both his wife as well as the club. And he doesn't really give in to either one. He just plays the middle ground and just kind of stays and just rides.
Yeah. And a good succinct comment that he made that kind of really speaks to his character was somewhere during the film. He's basically saying, I never asked for anything. I never wanted anything in return. Like, this is who he wanted to do his thing. And that was it from the beginning, and made that very clear. And that, I think, stayed consistent throughout the entire film. Yeah. What about you, Marco? Any notable performances in your mind?
For me, again, it's got to be Kathy, Jodie Comer. She was the main narrator of the story, and just the way she told how things unfolded and the way she described the characters was very unique, because again, you're hearing it basically and seeing it from her perspective. And even though she may say some things about, a certain character, like when we're shown what happens, you could get a different perspective of it. Aside from her, I think that Johnny as well, by Tom Hardy, I think that he was very interesting as well too. Although you never really get an explanation really as well, I guess you kind of do, but it's kind of an offshoot explanation as to why he starts the motorcycle club, because he watched the movie and he liked it. But it's not a strong enough explanation, but still, like, in a way, is a guy that's wanting to look for belonging and a family. Like, I guess, he has a family, but he showed more love for his motorcycle club than his own family. He's a very good flawed character because he wants the best for the people that he cares about, but he also makes mistakes in trying to do that. He's, in trying to push the wrong guy to be the leader of the club, he misses out on a good opportunity to try to find a successor and face his consequences because of that. And it's very tragic.
Yeah, I think, the idea of longing for something more, even though you feel like you have everything, I think a few of us can relate to that. I certainly can. Like, just because you have a lot of things in your life that are great for you doesn't necessarily mean you don't want something more and more connection. I mean, hey, I'm doing a podcast 2,000 miles away from you guys. I don't have to be here this time, but I want to be with you guys, right? I long to connect with y'all as much as we can, So there's always that idea. And so the sense of him trying to find that meaning for him, that he enjoys something and want to be able to meet other people that enjoy that stuff. Like, I think that's an interesting character development for him, of saying, I'm doing something, and this is how I want my life to be, make this a part of it. James, what about you? Anybody stand out for you?
Yeah, I mean, Tom Hardy character Johnny, he's just, like Marco said, he is very flawed. He's in over his head near the end of the film too, and him and Benny's relationship is almost like a father and son kind of relationship, and he wants Benny because he knows the guys respect Benny, and he's kind of losing sight of that things are getting really out of control because they keep adding more clubs to make the Vandals even bigger. It's just, but he's almost like a legendary figure to everybody else. Like, he's almost unknown. Like, yeah, he has a family and stuff, but he runs this club, and he's such a badass, and his sense of the coolness factor coming from him is fucking off the fucking charts, guys. He made me one. I was like, I want to join the motorcycle club.
I felt the same.
James is wearing a leather jacket right now.
Yeah, I'm smoking a cigarette, like chain smoking. It's just the way his shit is just. his on-screen presence, and that's why even the on-screen presence of Austin Butler was just, it's great with this one too. And I love that Benny, like Mikey was saying, is so in love with writing. Like that's his is his in the beginning of the film and throughout the film, it's his biggest concern. Like he gets in a really bad fight and then his foot's practically hanging off, and his first concern is like, don't take it off, because if they take it, I can't ride anymore. And I feel like the only time he really feels alive is when he's driving or riding his motorcycle, and and it shows that he's in this on this path where if he continues down this path, though, it's going to end up just like how Johnny's life is, where it's starting to get into more violence and bad things are going to happen, especially when he has, his wife Kathy back at home and stuff like that. So I will say this too about the other minor characters. It reminded me a lot of like the Warriors and how they have it set up, or like the Outsiders, another cool film.
The Outsiders.
Of how they all, although they don't get too much screen time, they have enough that you get enough of their character throughout the film, of how they are and what their quirks are, and what they all respect Johnny so much. Everybody loves Benny too. So it's just, I really felt like the actors' chemistry together, everyone's chemistry worked really well. Like I really liked Boyd Holbrook's character Cal, just because I feel like Boyd Holbrook always gets a bad rap. He's always in these shitty movies all the time. But it was cool to see him. And there's damn near like cameos of characters, like like Norman Reedus showed up. A lot of people are like, it looks like he just showed up out of nowhere on set. Like, I guess I'll just be in the movie. So
he's a big motorcycle guy, so I was hoping he was going to be in it. I was like,
I didn't even need makeup for him.
Nah.
Yeah, that was just him out of the way. It's his teeth.
That's just him.
Yeah, they're like, hey, can you shower today? He's like, no. He's like, all right. So
keep him with the look.
Yeah, I actually, overall, the cast is wonderful in this movie.
Yeah, and we've already talked a lot about the main character, so I want to add on somebody too, side character. Zipco, Michael Shannon's character, I thought was just, Michael Shannon does such a good job of playing somebody straight that you're laughing at. Yeah. And it's just so refreshing in this film, where you have everybody who's like really serious, some serious stuff going on over here, and he's over here hating the man, F you to the institution, wanting to try to be something and was dismissed, and you can feel like how much anger he has in it, but at the same time you can laugh at it because it's such a ridiculous situation that he's in, the reasons he hates things. So he just plays him so well, and he's only in a few scenes, but those moments are just really kind of connects and sets the tone of each scene that we're in with him. So I think that he did a great job. And to your point, James, talking about the chemistry with like Tom Hardy and Austin Butler and their connection over there, the father-son relationship, I think that Tom Hardy is a very good actor, and I think he goes a little too interesting with his role choices that sometimes it doesn't really always portray as well on screen, and because of who's directing him or what notes he's being given. But I think in this film, he's kind of back into that form of like, I know what I'm doing here, this is who I want to be, and had a really good vibe with all the characters that he was working with in here. So he really did stand out quite a bit for me as well in this movie.
And Michael Shannon's kind of like Jeff Nichols, Robert De Niro. He's been in every Nichols movie. So
yes, he has. Yeah, I mean, we saw the Midnight Special together with him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So let's talk a little bit about the plot. I'm going to go with you, Marco. Just in general, any specific thing about the story that you really felt connected to, or any themes that were brought up? I know we talked a little bit about the father and son thing. Like, what aspects of the plot itself really did you connect with, or didn't connect with?
For me, really, it was the whole the theme of what this mortar club, what the Vandals represented, which is almost like a point in time in the country where it was almost like it was close to post-Vietnam, where America was quote unquote losing its innocence to a point, right? And the club started off kind of like that, very innocent, a place for these guys to belong, to feel brotherhood, to feel family, even if they already had family. Not many of them really talked about extended family. I think some of them talked about a brother or a cut, something like that. But this was their extended family, the Vandals.
Yeah.
And so it starts off as something like that. And then you start to see like it's post-Vietnam, and they start to expand the group. And they even mention a lot of the guys that they're getting are people who have gone out to war, coming back with, that trauma, with all that they went through and everything with war, with what comes with war.
They've seen some shit
and it's like the inability to deal with that. It's the first time you had to deal with that ever since like World War II and stuff. And it showcases that transition, and the motorcycle club starts to get more violent. Things start to get more intense, more complicated. And I like that. I liked that comparison of where, how things quote unquote were and where they transcend into, and their inability to control it. Johnny eventually starts to not even be able to control his club. He's like, well, the young guys don't listen. I tell them don't do this or that, and they just do their own thing. And I like to see that, where that change in time from one to another. And I feel like it really captures it like kind of perfectly in the story.
Yeah. Mikey, what about your thoughts? Anything to add on to that, and maybe even some scenes that stood out?
I mean, just kind of piggybacking off Marco, I agree with a lot of what he said here. But it just kind of shows that even if you have really good intentions, Johnny is starting this club because he wants to just hang out with people that, quote unquote, it's a place to belong for the people that don't belong kind of thing. Right. So it's just so good, such a good intention that he was trying to go for, but it just shows like how much things got out of hand and they spiraled out of control. And he really didn't have a way to recuperate once it started doing that. He attempts to, but he just doesn't have a way to. He's focused on his chapter, his people. And because of that, he just couldn't control everything outside of that. So it really just shows like how much just intentions kind of play into things and how much you can get. There's just chaos. There's just so much unknown information out there that you just can't expect. And then once it gets out of control, you can't reel it back in. It's just too much.
Yeah, I mean, that's how we felt before bringing you in on the pod full time. Like, we weren't sure what kind of chaos you were going to bring to this. And so it took us a while. And I think it's working out all right. But God knows what you're going to come by one day behind Marco in his room with a knife. And, God, I don't know what's going to happen after that.
We're going back to a trio.
Yeah.
Mikey already doesn't listen to us. We start whenever he says. So
yeah, I'm the boss.
5 more minutes. Okay, man. Jesus.
What about yourself, James? Any thoughts on to add on the plot itself or some of the scenes?
Some scenes I really liked. For instance, it shows you the camaraderie ship, or kind of even going back to Benny. There's a part where Johnny's talking to another gang kind of or club that shows up at a meet, and it's actually going okay, but Benny is under the impression that they're about to fight, so he just starts a brawl with everybody. Right. And as soon as he punches a glass, and it's just kind of gruesome, it's stuck in his hand, and after that they all kind of just chill and like, let's go get drinks. I thought that was cool because it kind of shows like the boys will be boys kind of thing, right? Like at the end of the day, guys can fight and stuff, and then in a minute we can be like, oh, you guys want to go get some food or something, and then be totally fine. And I actually liked how they kind of portrayed that. It's just a misunderstanding, and sometimes you just got to duke it out. And that's like the old school feeling of it, I guess, for at least for that scene. And I thought it was a good mix of just a comedy too in that. So, and any scene with the motorcycles, it's awesome, man. Just the sound was really good on those too, and it's just the way that they portray the how cool they are and how they're making choppers and everything's kind of custom. And I like the scene where Cal is breaking down, like, you can buy any kind of motorcycle, but it takes a real guy to like actually customize it. And it's unique to them. That's why they love their bike so much. So I like that.
Yeah, they've customized it to spec it the way they want it to be. And I think that's a part of the storytelling you don't get in some of these films that do feature cars or motorcycles, about like the actual the motorhead, the person who's actually taking the time to invest into their vehicle to make it their own and not just buying something off the street. But I do agree with like the visuals that we had, especially the scene where Benny's being chased by the cops. That whole sequence is pretty awesome. Just you feel like you're right on the motorcycle with him, and all the way to by the time you kind of, and this is a little bit of a spoiler, but by the time you feel like he's escaped, and then suddenly he's just fucking out of gas, and there's nothing you can do here.
Yeah, he's like, well, they got me.
Yeah,
it shows you how alive he is doing that, though. It's such a thing. And I like the follow up with it where they're like, "Did you run 21 lights or something?" And he's like, "I guess that's what they said." So
felt like more.
Felt like more. Yeah.
What about so we talked a little bit, James brought up some of the scenes, but Mike, I'm going to go back to you a little bit. Anything else visually stood out for you? Like, was there any shots that you were like, wow, I can't believe I'm seeing this? Or was like, why do we put this in this movie?
You guys mentioned it here, but I like the riding scenes, like where they were going through the farmlands and you're just seeing like these nice, like sweeping shots of just beautiful land. And then the overall vibe of the film was just like 70s, a little bit of grunginess to it. and it just had like a whole like almost a photographic feel to it, because I know this movie came from like photography and you know, that kind of stuff here.
Yeah, right.
And I felt like they kind of matched that presence that you would see in like a photography book. Like if you were looking at like a photo album, it kind of captures that kind of look to it for me.
Yeah, I think, and if I remember correctly, reading a little bit on the history of this film, like that reporter or interviewer, he makes a mention that he's going to make a book. Like that's what the inspiration of this film was from. It's an actual motorcycle book that he has pictures and the interviews on there. So he tried to recreate those scenes from the photos into the film, so you got to see that, you know, be fully realized rather than just seeing the pictures or the stills from the original book that came out in the 70s. What about you, Marco? Anything that really stood out to you that was memorable?
Kind of echoing what Mikey was saying, just the visuals they would use as they were riding the bikes. Like that, it was always really cool. I know we recently saw like a movie that involved motorcycles, Furiosa, but the way this movie does it, you know, obviously they're not in a post-war country or anything.
I would say slightly different themes there.
Yeah. But it was cool to see them like all riding and stuff. They'd all do these mannerisms too. Like sometimes they'd be riding and holding with one handle and kind of look back like with half their body and stuff. It was cool to kind of see like these guys, you know, just riding in action in their natural habitat. And also, whenever they had those like biker get-togethers, I know like James had mentioned in one they had a brawl and stuff, but then you have another one later on where they're all just chilling and sharing stories, and the main interviewer guy is just like asking them, you know, random questions and getting to know them and get their personality. But all that was filmed so well.
You know what? I would have wanted more out of Mike Fast now too, especially after seeing Challengers recently.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
I like, he's such a minor character in this movie, but it was cool.
Yeah, they only show him a couple times. Really, he has like I think 3 prominent scenes.
Yeah, this movie was supposed to release last year, by the way, but it was.
I didn't realize.
Yeah, it was supposed to come out last year. It was delayed because of I want to say the strikes, and then they were dropped by Disney, and someone else had to pick them up. So
yeah, I think just we didn't really add this, but I want to mention there's a scene near the beginning ish where Kathy is meeting Benny for the first time, and she's getting back, and there's like a night scene with all the motorcycle crew following behind them on the highway, and I really like that. To me, set the tone of what these shots were going to look like, because it was really well done. But just seeing them all together over there.
It's funny though. It's funny in that scene because she's just meeting everyone for the first time and not getting the greatest first impression from these guys.
Right. Yeah.
They all eventually become like her family too.
Yep. So yeah, they all care about her. And then to that point about family, there's a scene, and they show a little bit of it in the trailer for those who haven't seen it, but where the club is essentially at this bar, and they're going to burn down this bar because of something that happened, and they all roll up in front of it, and just seeing that scene of them rolling up in front of the bar, knowing that shit's about to go down, and then when the building is burning, and they show a little bit again in the trailer where there's cops and ambulance on both sides, and they're like, "We need to leave."
Oh,
and he's like,
"It's a good scene."
They're afraid of us.
They're afraid of us. Yeah, like that's a great scene.
That's the scene where I was like, "Johnny, where do I sign up?"
All right, so we're going to talk a little bit about spoilers in a second here. This is just a little bit more to talk about in the film itself. But before we do, let's just get our ratings in, and then we'll jump into that section. Let's start with you, James. What would you rate this film, and would you recommend it?
I give this one a 3.5 stars, and yes, I would recommend it. I think it was a good theater experience. If you can catch it in theaters, it was overall an entertaining film.
Excellent. How about yourself, Mikey?
I give this one 4 stars, and I definitely recommended it. I thought it was really good.
And Marco?
I also give this one 4 stars. I think it was a really good movie. I think it's worth a watch in theaters. Definitely go check it out if you can.
I also gave it a 4 stars, and I recommend it. And as well, echoing everybody again, this film you should, if you can, catch it in the theaters. You'll just have a better, more enveloped experience being able to see this in the cinema rather than waiting for it to come online. So with that, we're going to jump a little bit in the spoilers just to talk about some major plot points, which you may or may not assume is going to happen in this film. If you haven't seen the film yet, I would say skip forward a little bit where we can tell you what we're going to be watching next. Otherwise, stick with us while we jump into the spoilers. All right, so the plot, for the most part, we start from the beginning, seeing how this club starts to its inevitable downfall. The downfall being, we've talked a little bit already about it, just that it gets more violent. And it's really because the club gets so big with so many chapters and so many people that are coming out of Vietnam who have had a lot to deal with, and it's taking it out in this club and becoming more violent because of it, that it just evolves into essentially a gang, very violent gang. And because of that, unfortunately, Johnny, who is trying to hold through the rules of, anybody can challenge him for leadership, since he hasn't found a successor yet, he does get challenged, and it's a fight to, I guess, I don't know if it's really to the death, it's with knives, but he shows up for this fight, and the other guy cheats and shoots him down dead. And that's the end of Johnny. Unfortunately, he tried to stay with honor throughout the whole ownership of the running of the club, and it became, what he didn't realize it was becoming, which is something more than he ever anticipated. What did you guys think about like his fate and how that really ended? Like, do you feel that he should have saw this coming, or do you think that it was going to be an inevitable end for him? And I'm going to go with you, James, just to get your thoughts on his fate.
I think it was an inevitable end. Johnny's still thinking like it's still the 60s, right? And this is just a classic times are changing kind of thing. And this young guy, he got embarrassed by Johnny earlier in the film. He kind of, we slowly see that he actually looked up to Johnny, and then him shitting on him because Johnny tricked him, and because the guy would have left his friends to join the club. I actually like that scene a lot. I didn't want to bring it up until spoilers, obviously, but and then he's like, "You're a piece of shit for that." Which Johnny has a sense of an honor code to him, and this new crew of people in the 70s, obviously, we're in this early 70s at this point, do not. And this is the new crew, and this is what happens. And this is also what correlates to what can happen to Benny if he continues down this path, which is a good parallel.
Yeah. And I'm going to take your take on this, Marco, in regards to, James Broad and Benny. How do you feel about how he came about his ending and the story? Do you think it was, I know this is all based on a true story, but do you feel like that's accurate to what we were seeing, or do you think that there would have been more to him, especially with his love of motorcycle riding in that club?
I think it is. I think it fits Benny really well, because I think he knew that he would become someone like the young kid that killed Johnny if he were to become leader, because we see that even at the beginning and a little bit in the middle of the movie where Benny refuses to take off his jacket, his club jacket. Two guys challenge him, and he basically antagonizes them by not doing it, and decides to fight them, hence perpetuating the violence. And him seeing Johnny's fate and what happened and who it was that did it, I think sparked something in him, be like, I'm gonna end up dying, or that's where I'm gonna end up if I continue to do this. As much as I love this, I think I actually do value my life a little bit more. And he ended up escaping from that, even though it hurt him, because you see him at the end, he's smiling at Kathy, and he's looks happy, but then he's looking off to the side, and you hear the motorcycle sounds, and he misses it, but he knows that he'll end up just like Benny if he continues down that path. Either Benny, or he becomes like the dude who's now the leader of the club who turned into a gang.
Yeah, you either turn in Johnny or that. I like that scene with when he comes back, because he's gone for like a year or something.
Yeah.
Right, or 2 years? I don't know.
Disappears. Yeah.
He kind of just drives off after. There's an issue with Cockroach where they have to make it look like he got killed. Basically, just get him out of there, because Cockroach wants to become a police cop, which is like crazy to tell people that. I was like, maybe keep that one to yourself, big guy. Like, I don't know why the hell you're telling people that at a party you're all drinking. Like, not a good look. But
tells it to the three shadiest guys there.
That's the one scene I wanted to talk about too, was with Benny and Kathy, where he comes back and he's just on the porch. He's crying, and it's not just he's crying because he finds out that Johnny died. I think it's almost like he's lost a father figure, but it's also, I think he's crying. I think me and Mikey talked about this other movie. He's crying because he knows he can't ride anymore. Like, he has to give up like the biggest thing that he loves the most out of his life. So I thought that was really well done.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. James said it begins a shift in his character and who he is, knowing that he can no longer have what he's kind of tried to hold on to, even with leaving, and is like, this is now the choice for me, because I don't want what happened to Johnny to happen to me, but also I don't want to go through this alone, and he's coming back to Kathy to feel that.
I actually like that it ended on, even though it's a somber ending. I like that Benny didn't get killed by the end.
Yeah.
I thought he was gonna die. I was like, he ain't gonna make this.
Mm-hmm.
Especially being so young.
I know. I mean, it's Elvis. I mean, he's got to do Blue Hawaii
It's
still.
happening, What about you, Mikey? So speaking about Benny and Kathy specifically, like there was a scene with Kathy we haven't really touched on where she essentially almost gets raped, and to me it's a very well shot scene. Like the terror that somebody's facing, like you're around all these guys and you're being protected by the leader of the club, but when they're not around, who's there to protect you, you know? And she potentially going to be put in a situation where that I don't know if she could ever recover from. And like how do you feel about her outcome in this story, and maybe the relationship with her and Benny, or even this triangle like we kind of mentioned between her and Johnny, like how this ended for him?
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to say like she won the battle, but I mean, she does end up being with Johnny, but I think it's not true Johnny, and she kind of feels that as well. So yes, she's with him at the
Benny,
end. I'm sorry, yeah, Benny. She's with him at the end, but she even knows, like looking out. I think like she was looking out the window at him, and he's just talking with his cousin, owns a shop in Florida, whatever they were at.
Right.
And I think she actually knows that it's not the complete Benny that she knew from the past. And so she's got a little bit of, I don't know, there's something there that's, something's missing. She knows it a little bit, but in the end, she knows it's the best for her and it's the best for Benny as well. So it's like kind of like James was saying, it's kind of a sad ending, but it's also a happy ending. Benny's still alive. He's still functioning. He's still with her. So it's just kind of a strange ending, but it's good in some ways and bad in others. So it's just a matter of perspective, I guess.
It's like life, right? Things happen. You have to adjust to it, and you have to do the best you can to keep moving forward. So, unfortunately, for Benny, it's his loss of the club, and it's the loss of what he loves to do. But ultimately, he makes a choice to change his life, which is nice.
Yeah, I mean, we're all going through our middle stage of our life. Well, some of us sooner than others. And obviously Marco's like coming on the other side of his golden ages at this point. He's 102, I think. So,
yeah, he was there when the first motorcycle, he's like, we just called them pedal bikes.
So
motor scooters.
There's a sense of longing for something that you may not have had a chance to have, while also knowing when to let something go and move forward, right? And that's some of the people here had a harder lesson to learn than others, and some people were fortunate enough to figure their shit out before it got too rough for them, and they couldn't get out of it. And I think that's like a good overall like storytelling of this film, where we're really seeing the people embrace one thing, but then being able to see what decisions you've made in this and how you come out either a better person or maybe not a better person, depending on the situation, or getting stuck. Like we have, I think it's Wahoo and Brucey. I think we're stuck.
Wahoo and
Corky, that's it. They were stuck in the club. Like they didn't, whether they really wanted to or not. Like this is who they were now, and this is they were with
more like, they're the ones that are literally in the car. They're like, "Holy fuck, what do we do?"
Right. Yep.
And they're like, just rolled with them for a while because I almost feel like they were scared of that kid. And
exactly.
So, what do you think about Brucey? Didn't Brucey seem way too fucking old to be in that club?
He did.
Yeah.
Every time I saw him, I was like, "This guy like in his mid-50s. What the fuck are he trolling?" His death
one that died, right?
Brutal, by the way.
Yeah.
I was like, oh god. Yeah. No, hey, truthfully, I was thinking about it when I watched it. Said helmet probably would have saved his life, but
right.
You don't look cool wearing a helmet on a bike.
And to the point of like how he died, it wasn't even like he was doing anything. Without the gear, of course, but doing anything reckless. Like
just carpooled
some
out.
fucker just backed out and just knocked him
That
down.
was the end of him. That was that.
Which is a common thing also with a lot of the accidents from motorcycles even today, that it's usually other people just not seeing you or hearing you, and you can be as careful as you want.
I believe of motorcycle accidents happen not because of the motorcyclist, but because of others.
Oh, talking about Brucey though, it's like that whole scene after he passed or got hit, whatever, or hit the car or whatever.
Yeah. No, he hit it, Mikey.
Family? Yeah, he hit the car.
It's got smacked into the back, Mike. I don't know if he caught that or not, but he hit it.
Yeah, but the whole scene with his family at the church or at the funeral, pretty crazy. Like, they're trying to sit there and be I mean, that's basically like we were saying before, and it's basically his extended family. Like he was with them probably more than he would with the actual family itself. And, the family is blaming the club, but it's really, I mean, the club really didn't do anything, especially in this case. Like they have all this violence going around, and this guy dies from just hitting a car, backing up through a driveway. So it's just a really nice aspect of like, you get to see both sides of it. The family doesn't really understand. The club is really just trying to be there to be supportive of the family. And it's hard to see like what happens, how that works out.
You like Vietnam vibes for that one, like how people would come back and people were spitting on them, not knowing the things that they went through overseas and blaming them when they were just doing what they're doing, So there's some contrasting kind of imagery with that. I thought it was really well done.
I caught it just as them, essentially knowing what the motorcycle club would lead to, which is whether he died that way or through some other violent means. Like they knew like the ultimate outcome of that lifestyle would be like a death sentence. And even Kathy knew that as well too. And even after which, I think it was after this or after Benny's accident, went after Johnny as well too, and even tried to tell him that as well too. It's one of the best scenes in the movie too. She's just going off on him and telling him, like basically this lifestyle will be a death sentence essentially for any of them.
Yeah, she's like, it's either you guys or him. You gotta get him off the club. And Johnny turns around and tries to offer the club to fucking Benny. Like, you want to be the leader? I was like, oh, okay. I guess he doesn't give a shit about Kathy. Like, okay.
He's like, this is men stuff.
Yeah, cool. Okay, is that all?
He's like, I need to retire.
But I mean, and to that point, Marco, what you were saying, I don't remember who said the line, but essentially they all echoed that sentiment of like Brucey died the best way that any one of them could have, which is on the motorcycle, feeling free and dying, loving what they like doing. So that's the story of all of them right there, is what they wanted.
I even like one last thing I'll bring up before we end this out is Kathy's interviews from the 60s and the 70s are quite different. She's a lot more optimistic in that earlier interviews where she's like, the guys are just do what they want to do. And then later we see it after everything's happened and she's a lot different. I like that too.
She's seen some stuff and she's happy that she's
been living in Florida. So I mean, I get it. So.
Right.
All right, guys. So with that is the end of the podcast. We appreciate you all for tuning in. Marco, let them know how they can reach us.
You can listen and follow us on your preferred podcast platform. We are everywhere. For a convenient link to all our social media channels, visit linktree/moviepalspod. That's linktr.ee/moviepalspod. And remember, smash that subscribe button and you'll never miss an episode on this ride or the next.
Catch us on TikTok for sneak peeks of upcoming episodes and more exciting movie content. Follow us at Movie Pals Pod.
And make sure to tune in for our next episode, podcast episode number 178, where we will be doing a marathon of all the Beverly Hills Cop films, including the upcoming Beverly Hills Cop Axel F, streaming soon on Netflix.
Thank you, Nabil. Until next time, this is James,
Marco,
Nabil,
and Mikey.
Have a great one.